The Pantheon is a Roman church that was built 19,000 years ago that is still in use today. I find that amazing. How is it that a building that was built 19,000 years ago can still be in use today when buildings built last century, 2 centuries ago are no longer around? And the secret to its longevity is in its foundation. I believe foundation is very important. Our foundations are important, and as people, our foundations are built and structured during our childhood, which is heavily influenced by our parents. Which is why I'm going to try and persuade you guys to take action and research on how to be good parents for your future children, for the future generations, and for the betterment of this world. I'll do this by informing you what ACEs are, how to combat ACEs, and why I believe parents are the anti-heroes when it comes to parenting. First, let me inform you what ACEs are. In her TED Talk, and Nadine Bruce in 2014 states, it was done by Dr. Vince and Vitihi at Kaiser and Dr. Bob Anda at CDC. And together they asked 17,500 adults about their experience of exposure to what they called adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. Those include physical, emotional, or sexual abuse, physical or emotional neglect, parent mental illness, substance dependence, incarceration, parental separation or divorce, or domestic violence. For every yes, you would get a point on your ACE score. And then what they did was correlate these ACE scores against health outcomes. And what they found was striking. 2 things. Number 1, ACEs are incredibly common. 60% of the population had at least 1 ACE, and 12.6%, or 1 in 8, had 4 or more ACEs. The second thing they found was that there was a dose-response relationship between ACEs and health outcomes. The higher your ACE score, the more worse your health outcome for a person would be. For people with an ACE score of 4 or more, their relative risk for chronic obstructive pulmonary disease was 2.5 times that of someone with an ACE score of 0. For hepatitis, it was also 2.5. For depression, it was 4.5. For suicide, it was 12 times. A person with an ACE score of 7 or more had triple the lifetime risk of lung cancer and 3.5 times the risk of ischemic heart disease, the #1 killer in the US. Now, while these might sound like terrible numbers, I do have to let you guys know that not all parents are bad. Some parents might unintentionally be affecting ACEs onto their children. I'd like to point this out by what Yukino Makita states in her TED Talk why most parenting advice is wrong. She states, one child might find it helpful when her mother provides structure. Her sister might find it stifling. One child might think his parents are caring when they ask questions about his friends. His brother might think they're being nosy. One child might view divorce as a tragedy, while her sister sees it as a relief. Same event, different experiences. This happens because as people, we go through similar events, but view the world differently. Now that I've told you what ACEs are and given you a quote about ACEs, I would like to go on to my second main point, which is how to combat ACEs. Dorsey Amir is an anthropologist who went to Africa to study how other tribes raise children as compared to the West. In her TED Talk, How the Industrial Revolution Changed Children, she states, in small-scale societies, along the side of the adult community is a complex mini-community of children. An alternate society. This children's society is made up of kids of all ages and genders. It has its own unique culture and leader. It has drama and a surprising amount of political intrigue. To understand why this child society is important for human development, it helps to keep in mind a curious fact about humans, and that is to become a successful adult in any culture, children have to learn an enormous amount of complicated skills. These include both technical skills, like building a fire, and social skills, like maintaining friendships. And to perfect these skills, which takes decades, children learn a bunch of foundational skills, like creativity, determination, and problem solving. Another important benefit to this mixed-age society is that kids teach and learn from one another. Younger kids benefit by learning from older kids who are slightly better than them. And through teaching them, the older kids strengthen their own skills. As you may have experienced yourself, teaching helps you learn. I'd like to tell you a story about an old professor who told us students that she was afraid of the kitchen. She described the kitchen as a terrifying place, a place she wouldn't like to go to because there was something that could burn her, something that could roast her alive, and something that could chop her up. Honestly, when I first heard her describe what a kitchen was, I found it a bit amusing, similar to how a child might describe what a kitchen is. But then, upon pondering, I realized that that's exactly what it was. Her parents had described to her what a kitchen was, instilling that fear, hoping that as a child she would stay out of the kitchen. Well, it worked, maybe a bit too well, because now she was a grandma and still afraid of the kitchen. She realized that this was illogical and worked better for it and tried to overcome that fear, but not that many people realized it in their lifetimes. Now that I've told you about strategies to combat ACEs through realizing it with yourself by going to therapy or something, or different ways to raise children, I'm going to be talking to you about why I believe parents are the anti-heroes when it comes to parenting. As Helen Pearson states in her TED Talk in 2017, Lessons from the Longest Study in Humanity, in one study, scientists looked at about 17,000 children who were born in 1917. They shifted all the mountains of data and they collected and tried to work out what allowed. The data showed what mattered more than anything else was parents. Having engaging, interested parents in those first few years of life was what linked children to going on to do well in school and later on in life. In fact, quite small things parents did are associated with good outcomes for children, like talking to them every day when they were 5 and showed interest in their education at the age of 10, were significantly less likely to be at a party at the age of 30 than those whose parents didn't do this. Now, I know some parents might be, well, I go to work every day. I work hard 8 hours a day to provide money for my child so they can have a roof over their head, so they can have food, so they can go to school, so they can have the things they want. And while true this is important, you can't neglect a child's emotional needs to replace their physical needs. It's all about balance, and it's a parent's duty to maintain that balance for a child so they can have a strong foundation and grow up to be a better adult later on in life. In conclusion, now that I've talked about ACEs, why I believe strategies against ACEs, and why I believe parents are the anti-heroes of ACEs, I would like to question you guys. I brought the ACE test here if any of you guys would like to take it and see what ACEs you guys might have, what things you guys might have gone through in life, your parents might unintentionally have left you to deal with, and how you can improve on being a parent should you ever choose to be one later on in life. Thank you.